Hey everybody, just so you know, we are working on the new show. We are going to get it up and get it live here in the next few days. We're looking to launch this week, but I don't have an exact date yet. We will sort of iron out the details and let you know as soon as we know something. And if you want the latest updates, you can always check me out on News Radio 1440 or newsradio1440.com. That will be 7 to 9. I'm on Decisions with Kevin Elkins, and so if you're ever curious about the status of the broadcast, if you're wondering if there's any new news, you can either go there or you can go to my Facebook page, Twitter, any of those things, Tactics Radio or tacticsradio.com. Any of those will give you all the latest news. One of the things I did want to talk about today that has really been weighing on my mind, and I've been watching this, unfortunately, play out all weekend, is the various tragedies that we've had over the week. And of course, we started out with the domestic terrorist guy who, based on all that we know, was politically motivated. I'm not going to talk about how he was politically motivated because that's not really the purpose of our talk today. And the other one I'm not going to talk about because of my 48-hour rule, and you know what I'm going to say there. If you've been listening to this program for some time, you know that I have a 48-hour rule, which is I don't speak, at least, about the political implications. I'll talk about the news, but I won't give any kind of opinion or analysis until at least 48 hours after the event has transpired. And what I'm talking about is what happened, sadly, on Saturday, on the Sabbath. And it happened at the synagogue at the Tree of Life Center there in Pittsburgh. And this is something that is really weighing on my mind. And the reason that I implemented the 48-hour rule in the first place is to avoid exactly what is happening, or at least to avoid me becoming part of the problem when we're talking about these various issues. It really is terribly sad to see what is going on with our recent political dialogue. And I'm just going to say this the only way I really understand how, if you are a person that your first reaction to any kind of tragedy like this is to immediately start seeking some kind of political advantage, you start pushing some kind of agenda or policy issue that you personally believe in, honestly, and I say this as somebody who has studied the Bible and studied religion quite a bit in my life, I think there's something wrong with your soul. And I'm not saying that to be vindictive. I'm not saying that to go after you personally. I'm saying genuinely out of concern for you and your spiritual health. I think that regardless of what side it's on, regardless of how you react, regardless of how you desire to react to it, your emotional response, if the very first thing that you think to do is start to, how can I use this to further my political narrative, I really, really think there's something wrong with your soul. And that's not something that's necessarily easy for me to say. It's not something that I say lightly. But when you see fellow human beings, your brothers and sisters, getting blown away or shot or whatever else the tragedy is, a knife stabbing, if the first thing that you do afterward is think about, all right, how can I use this to my political advantage, there really is something wrong with you. And I'm not saying this necessarily exclusively to people that, for example, are calling for gun control. Because even if it's a political issue that you disagree with and it's being pushed and your first reaction is to snap back and hit harder, I think even if you're on the defensive, and this is the reason that I don't even defend the policy positions that I personally agree with, even when they're being attacked in the 48 hours after a tragedy. Because doing so is something that you choose. I can't control what people say. I can't control the fact that with some people, regardless of what the tragedy is, the first thing they do is they start calling for policy changes. I can't control that. But I can control what I do. And I can control how I react to it. And I am just so sick of everybody constantly being at each other's throats the second one of these things happen. I can remember, and this is not just something that happened in this particular tragedy, this has happened time and time and time and time and time again with other shootings and killings of all sorts. The bodies aren't even cold. Heck, the investigation hasn't even started sometimes when people start calling for their favorite policy to be pushed. By politicians, by thought leaders, by political pundits. And I'm just sick of it. I'm tired of it. And this actually goes back to something that I was saying on Friday. If you happen to listen to the radio show with me and Kevin, I got into a debate with somebody, and we weren't talking about this. We weren't talking about the tragedies or anything like that. But one thing that she said over and over again is that, well, I know the intent is there. Without any proof of why she said that she believed that certain people intended for a law to do this. And that's one thing that I think is wrong with our political discourse. We're so quick to assign intent to everything. Well, I know that they're doing this because. I know that they really are trying to do this, and I think that we've got to be a lot more cautious when assigning intent to people on both sides. To Republicans, I think we got to do a better job about how we communicate with people on the left. And part of the reason that I'm saying that is, maybe this is true to a certain degree of people on both sides of the political aisle, but Republicans, we have to not necessarily assume that everybody is trying to destroy the country and they're trying to unroot it. There are some that are, and I understand that, and those people we have to fight against. I'm one of the main ones on the battlefield doing that. But to the average Democrat voter, the person that doesn't hold political office, the person that doesn't get millions of dollars to be on film or to be on TV, we can't assume that those people really want the American way of life to go away. A lot of the times people vote Democrat not because they want to entitle a bunch of lazy people to work or whatever else it is. There is good intent there. They really do want to help people. They really do care about people not getting the right opportunities. That's the vast, vast majority of the Democrats I've talked to. Not all of them. Some of them, they don't necessarily care about the politics. They don't necessarily care about who's in office as long as they feel that people are being taken care of. And even though I think they're naive and misguided from time to time, that's a good place to start. Can we recognize that there's some good intention there? And I say this to Democrats and people on the left, even though I tend to be more of a conservative. Can you not acknowledge that Republicans really do care about traditions and the rule of law and want people to have to work for what they earn, and that that is a good thing? Can we not acknowledge that there is good intent on both sides? That the average person, maybe not the people in power, but the average person that's just voting one side or the other, can we not acknowledge that they really do want people to be taken care of? They really do want people to have a good, prosperous life? Because unfortunately, I think we've gotten to the point to where we assume the worst in our neighbors. We assume the worst in our family members if they politically differ from us. And no good is going to come from that. And I'm not saying, because I don't blame society, I blame individuals. There is one person responsible for the shooting. There is one person responsible for the bombs that were sent this week. And that is the person that sent them. That is the person that was shooting. That's it. That is a comprehensive list of everybody that is responsible. But nonetheless, I don't think that it's necessarily a bad thing to take a step back and take a look at our society and take a look at how we deal with other people and do some self-reflection. And maybe think about how our words come off to other people. Because you know what? I don't think that they're causing these tragedies. But I don't think that the environment we've created is necessarily a good thing, regardless of whether the tragedies are happening or not. And so, as usual, in a very difficult time, when a lot of people don't necessarily know exactly what to do or say, I think the best place to go is the Bible. And so, if you look with me, there's a great verse in the Book of Wisdom by the wisest man that ever lived, King Solomon. And King Solomon says, let's see. King Solomon says in Proverbs 12:18, "There is one who speaks rashly like the thrust of a sword, but the tongue of the wise brings healing." I think that there's so much wisdom contained within that verse, because what Solomon is trying to convey here is not necessarily one that is a bad person, not necessarily somebody who doesn't care about people, but somebody that speaks rashly. And right now, especially in the world that we've created with social media, we are so quick to say things without thinking. We're so quick to jump on somebody, to assume ill intent, and those words hurt people. That's why he says that it's like the piercing of a sword. But the tongue of the wise brings healing. And we really need some healing right now. We need some healing for the families that are suffering, and we need some healing for the relationship in this country. We used to believe, even if we disagreed with one another politically, that we were all part of a country, that we were all part of a common heritage, a common family of people that genuinely wanted to be together. And we don't have that anymore. And I hate that. And if we're ever going to heal that relationship, we need to have wise tongues. If we're ever going to heal that relationship, we have got to be more cautious in the kind of speech that we use to one another. And I get, when we're coming from different places and we have different backgrounds and we have different experiences, communication is hard. And there's some things that can easily be misconstrued by somebody, and that's why I say it's important that we have to assume good intent. Because if we don't assume good intent, then those misunderstandings or misconceptions grow into resentment and hatred. And that's why right now I'm asking everybody to just be a little bit wiser in your choice of speech. Use a wise tongue. Don't speak rashly, because the implication is, if speaking rashly is what hurts and the tongue of the wise is what heals, then obviously the logical conclusion we can draw from Solomon's writing is that the person that is wise, the person that has a wise tongue, is one that stops and thinks about what he's going to say and about how the people he's speaking to will perceive it. That's what it means to have a wise tongue, and that's what it means to communicate with our brothers and sisters the way God intended. Stay the course, friends.